the notice. Notice of a public hearing. Notice of a public meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act. Notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a regular meeting on Tuesday, December 7, 2021 at 5 p.m. at the Brownsville Public Library Main Branch Meeting Room located at 2600 Central Boulevard, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas. Pursuant to Section 551.127 Texas Government Code, one or more commissioners or employees may attend this meeting remotely using video conferencing technology. The video and audio feed of the video conferencing equipment can be viewed and heard by the public at the address posted above at the location of the meeting. Members of the public, employees, and the City Commission may join via the WebEx teleconferencing meeting by logging on to the link on the city's website. This notice and meeting agenda is posted on the city's website for everyone to view. I'll call the meeting to order. We do have Commissioner Cowan is present, Commissioner Galansky, Commissioner De Los Santos, Commissioner Gowan, Commissioner Cardenas. Those I just mentioned are here in person. The ones that we do have virtually is Mayor Trey Mendez, and Commissioner Tetro is not here at this time. But just so everyone knows, at this time, Mayor Pro Tem is Commissioner Cardenas, so he will go ahead and be the one to preside for this meeting. So we do have a quorum present, so we may proceed with the invocation. Pastor?
Let's all stand and remain standing for the pledge after the prayer. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy. We thank you for the many blessings we have in the city of Brownsville and in the United States of America. Forgive us for the many times we have not been grateful and only come to you with our wants. But Lord, we thank you for everything, and we give you praise and glory for it. And Father God, we ask you to give our mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, all the city commissioners divine wisdom tonight as they consider all the issues before them. We know that you understand the issues better than we do because you know the future and you know the effects of them. Lord, we ask you to help each of us to remain in unity and to love each other as we love you. We ask you all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
We'll have a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what has already been spoken. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Next on the agenda, we have a proclamation recognizing Jubilee Academics RGV for the Gear Up program. Commissioner De Los Santos, read the proclamation.
Thank you.
Excuse me, do we have anybody here to receive the proclamation? Thank you.
A proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, recognizing Jubilee Academy's RGV Gear Up program. Whereas the Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs, Gear Up, is federally funded, competitive grant program designed to increase the number of low-income students who are prepared to enter and succeed in post-secondary education. And whereas Gear Up is built around public-private partnerships, enlisting the formidable resources of government, business, and community groups to support low-income students as they prepare to enter and succeed in college. And whereas the Gear Up program is a partnership of the United States Department of Education and the Texas Education Agency. And whereas the Gear Up program serves 4,150 students in K through 7 preparing students and families for college, career, or military choices after high school with university and job site visits, financial literacy, and many more opportunities. And whereas Gear Up is built around public-private partnerships enlisting the formidable resources of government, business, and community groups to support low-income students as they prepare to enter and succeed in college. And whereas the city of Brownsville is committed to providing a quality education for all students and helping them to achieve their highest potential, as well as recognizing Jubilee Academy's RG participation in the Gear Up program. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the charter of said city, and on behalf of all our citizens, do hereby recognize Jubilee Academy's RGV for their participation in the Gear Up program of Brownsville, Texas, and further encourage the residents to support the quality education of all students to help them to achieve their career and leadership goals. We urge all citizens to join in this special observance done on this 7th day of December, 2021. Congratulations.
Can we get a group photo real quick for social media?
Where y'all want us?
Stand right.
Right up here.
Squeeze in, squeeze in. I'm blocking it.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I'll tell y'all to scoot over
You
fast.
guys are the stars of this photo anyway, not us.
Commissioner De Los Santos. 1, 2, 3. Thank y'all.
You have any words? Yes.
Anything you'd like to say? Feel free.
Thank you, guys. My name is Dr. Kevin Phillips. I'm superintendent of Jubilee Academies. And of course, Jubilee, well, of course, but in case you didn't know, Jubilee, we operate in 4 different regions: Austin, San Antonio, Kingsville, and one of our largest regions here. It means a lot to us because we are grounded and rooted in the community. And receiving this Gear Up grant is something that we've been working on for about 1.5 years now. And what this will do is allow us to provide opportunities for our kids and families that they wouldn't otherwise have without this grant. And in the likes of 20 over the next 7 years. And we intend to incorporate some partnerships with gain that early awareness around college readiness, career readiness for those that choose to go directly into the workforce, and even the military readiness, helping them to understand the opportunities that are out there. And so we're going to seek those partnerships. We've already sought out several partnerships. We'll seek out other partnerships where we can get our kids and our families out in the community more, get the community into our schools more. And so that we bridge those gaps of communication and understanding so that kids in the next 7 years have a better understanding of when they walk across that stage, what they want to do with the rest of their lives. Financial literacy is going to be a big piece of what we do, the work that we do with this Gear Up grant, and helping our families better prepare now for their kids' post-secondary education. So when they walk across the stage, if parents want their kids to go to college, we're going to provide them with the means and the knowledge and understanding of how to get that opportunity into their kids' hands. And so really excited about this grant, but really excited about the partnership within the community that's going to be there and that will continue to thrive for Jubilee Academies and the city of Brownsville. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next, we have the public comment period. Nobody signed up for public comments. We'll move on to the next agenda item. I believe we're going to be moving public hearing number 3 as the next agenda item. Do we have a motion for that?
Also move.
Second. Thank you. I'll go ahead and read the agenda item.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry.
We're moving 3. so you can-
Oh, sorry, my bad. So I have a conflict of interest, right? Or what? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
I have a conflict of interest, so I will step out. And I will drop off the conflict of interest form with the city secretary's office.
Oh, I'm glad you were here. Good thing, right?
Okay, I'll go ahead and read agenda item number 3, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2021-1695 to annex into the city of Brownsville boundary limits a property described as being 9.997 acres of land more or less out of Lot 2, Block 204, El Jardín re-subdivision, according to the map thereof recorded in Volume 4, page 48, map records of Cameron County, Texas, located near the intersection of Dockberry Road and Indiana Avenue, Brownsville, Texas. Planning Department will present.
Yes, good evening, Kim. Can we put this slide? Okay, so this is a voluntary annexation petition for 9.97 acres. It will be a future single-family residence consisting of 412 lots. This is just 10 acres out of a larger parent tract, which currently lies outside of city limits. The remainder is within city limits at this time. So it is fronting Dockberry Road and Indiana Avenue. Next slide. And so this is just a summary of what staff does to incorporate these voluntary annexations into the city. Next slide. This is an aerial view of the property. As you can see, this is, like I said, only the 10 acres to the west of the entire parent tract that lie outside city limits, and most of the area around it is undeveloped. Next slide. Bird's eye view to give perspective. And this is the layout of the entire subdivision. This again shows the portion that lies outside city limits. Will staff recommends approval to annex this 9.97 acre tract of land into the city limits. Any questions?
On the section that is currently outside of the city limits, has it been built already?
No, they have submitted the documents and we're working with the developer. They've agreed to, as with other annexations, to build out the infrastructure. And it hasn't been finalized, but we're in progress.
They'll build to city standards then, since they're being annexed. Okay. If there's any opportunity to incent them to build to a higher standard until we can get our standards raised, I encourage the department to look at that.
All right, do we have anybody else to speak on this?
Public hearing.
Do I have a motion to close this public?
Motion to close public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right, so do we have
Move to approve.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I guess we can bring in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna go back to the regular agenda, which is a work session. Okay,
Just wait for Commissioner.
Commissioner Galonsky, you can come back in.
It's on our way in.
The work session, number 1, downtown beautification and maintenance pilot program update.
Good evening, Commissioners. Alan Garces with the Planning Department. Nice to see everybody today. If we could move on to the next slide, please. Just wanted to give you a brief update on, thank you, on the beautification program we're working with along with the Must Foundation. We are working along with the CIC as well as the Planning and Redevelopment Department. We structured this in 2 phases. The first phase is to work with the Must Foundation to provide services to the downtown business owners that are not structure related. So as you can see there on phase 1, it involves power washing of the building facades, possibly painting, minor door repair, minor window repair. Like I mentioned earlier, not something that is structurally related, more of the beautification process of the building and bringing that into the redevelopment phase. So we're starting off with that. We've been speaking with the Must Foundation to move forward directly with the vendors, and they are ready to move forward with the soft power washing. And we say soft power washing because We're not including vendors that only do power washing because they might damage the historic buildings in the downtown area. Phase two is a little bit more involved with the planning and redevelopment department. That is more structurally sound improvements. As you can see, the sign improvements, awning improvements, just general historic preservation of architectural features. So that's where we come in, and we'll be looking into that as far as the plans, more actual documents submitted to the department that do need to go through the building permit process. So we have spoken to contractors, we have given them examples, we have walked through those, the downtown area, looked at buildings to get possible cost estimates to present to the Moss Foundation. Moving on, another project that we've been working on is with the Moss Foundation. We are planning a event for Market Square this Thursday, December the 9th, from 6:30 to 9 o'clock. Market Square area, as you can see in some of the pictures, was a little dirty, and we were able to get the Moss Foundation to contact some vendors to pay them out directly for the power washing. And you'll see that was $6,750 paid directly to the vendor for the Market Square area. That included power washing the Market Square building itself, sidewalks. It also included power washing the buildings, facades that were fronting the Market Square building as well. The other area was power washed. We're also, we were working with the Moss Foundation for this event. There you see a sneak preview of the lighting that you'll see on Thursday for this event. And that was paid out at $50,000 directly to the vendor as well. So that was directly from the Moss to the vendor. We're excited for this event. Those are the current updates that I have for you at the moment. I'm happy to answer any questions you have at the moment.
Alan, I do have a question. The $50,000 that was paid directly to the vendor on the second portion, is that just for Christmas lighting?
Correct. We have spoken with the vendor to possibly consider lighting to be permanent. Not this specific one, because there is a difference between the lighting that's permanent to the Christmas decoration lighting. But we are in talks with them to possibly have that area lit permanently.
Okay, but my question was, the $50,000 was just for Christmas.
Correct.
Was that bid out? I mean, that seems pretty expensive.
Right, so that conversation we did have, but that was something that the Moss Foundation wanted to move on directly, and that's why they paid the vendor out directly.
Okay, so the $50,000 directly, that was paid directly from Musk Foundation to the vendor.
To the vendor that they selected, correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Mayor, and that's a good question. I'll just make a quick note. That is one of those, I guess, tactics that we'd have to use to expedite the process. They're looking for efficiency and expediency. And by them going straight to the vendors, that eliminates any procurement requirements from the state. So $50,000 is the threshold we would have to procure or get through quotes. Because they go to the vendor, it makes it more efficient. And that's part of what they're seeking. So those are the types of things that we're having to do to meet them in the middle. Because otherwise, once it's in our coffers, it triggers a host of requirements. So that's what enabled this project to happen with the lighting. Otherwise, could have been another month or so just to get lights installed. So it is going to take those types of creative approaches as long as we can work in tandem with them.
Do we know it was the $50,000 to buy the lighting and put it up and take it down? Or is it just to have it up for this season and there's no assets that remain afterwards?
It was a little bit of both. The vendor did have some additional lights that he needed to purchase as well.
Yeah, the $50,000 covers 115,000 lights, includes installation, removal, storage, and then if the city elects to do it again next year, the lights will be available just for the cost of labor of reinstalling.
Okay, so then the Musk Foundation is donating those lights to the city of Brownsville.
Effectively, yes.
Very good. Thank you.
There was also some labor donated by the Rhodes, Rhodes Enterprises? So in this initial install, it also didn't fall straight on staff. Because of their contribution, they'll also be removing them. So that's another value added. And we sent that to you in an email update. So that's another win as part of this project.
Are they getting recognition in any promotional material or maybe at the ceremony on Thursday?
That's correct. We
I
do
would
plan,
think so.
yes, we do plan on having an MC mention them. We also have a DJ that works with the city and they'll be having their logos on their screens. And we did make some small signs thanking them that we plan to place by the Christmas tree on the December the 9th meeting.
About the two different phases, that's open to any building within a certain perimeter, or those two, or how's?
Right, so that's open to the downtown area in general, but I think right now, if I'm mistaken, we're focusing on Elizabeth.
Okay. Elizabeth, from where to where?
So the phase one boundary was established by BCIC. The phase two boundary will use the downtown core established in the Unified Development Code, and all buildings would for phase two.
And the vendors that we're talking about, are these local vendors? Do we know?
Local vendors for what specifically, the facing?
We have the 6750 that was paid out and the 50,000.
Correct, yes, they were local.
They're both local vendors.
all right.
Is there any criteria? Because like, what if it's a nicer building, but maybe they want to change the color or?
No, so paint is included. However, we are looking at revitalizing the downtown area as a whole. So it couldn't be included in phase one because it does include paint. We do have paints that were specifically approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. So we have those ready to go and we have that, made that available to BCSC.
So people show up to BCIC and ask for this, or is it just
So
doing every building? And
no. So that's specifically for stuff that does not need structure related improvement.
yeah, but let's say the paint.
Right.
Does somebody from a
That would
building
be
go,
handled by BCIC.
okay, so they go through BCIC.
Correct.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Move on to the next agenda item, the work session drainage policy update.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. Doro and Ziegler with Greenwood is going to make the presentation. But before then, I wanted to make a small announcement. A few months ago, earlier this year, Doro got his state license as an engineer. So he's now a state PE, a registered PE in the state of Texas. And, you know, that is a very large accomplishment. And subsequent to that, he's also the newest city engineer for the city of Brownsville.
I'm looking forward to serving the role of city engineer and fulfilling my duties. And we're going to start off pretty heavy, it looks like it. We're going to be going over our drainage policy update. And like Mr. Gutierrez mentioned, Isaac here with Ziegler Winston Greenwood will be helping us with this policy update. I'll be going over the current policies that we have, needs on why we need this improvements, and then Isaac will go over the scope of work. And Isaac will be going over the scope of work and the proposed project schedule for this project. Currently, we have various ordinances for drainage that govern within our municipality. We have our City of Brownsville policy, which covers the land development, and we also have the drainage report requirements. Aside from this, I'd say a large portion of the city also falls under the drainage district policy, which is a lot more stringent than the current city policies. What we're looking to do is to update our policies to hopefully exceed the Drainage District 1 requirements due to the new developments that we have. I'll talk about a little bit about our existing policy. It's over 20 years old, and this policy should be updated periodically. It hasn't more than anything because we fall within the drainage district area, but with the amount of development that's occurring now and the expanded growth to areas outside and the exterior of the city, we felt that it was important to do this policy update. Currently, the other benefits that we have by updating this policy is that our current storm is based on a 5-year storm, which is very outdated when you look at drainage policies in comparison to other cities. Our drainage district is based on a 10-year and it goes up depending on the land size that you're developing. The other thing that will help us for future development, it'll create more stringent criteria for our developments. With all the money that we're investing with our Texas Water Development Board funds, it's very important that we protect this asset. And by updating our policy, it'll help us protect that asset that we're getting very close to start investing on. This will also help us avoid any repetitive loss of homes that we've had in the city. Fortunately, we've been very lucky that we haven't gotten hit by that one big storm. But, you know, for the few residents that we have had, been affected by the recent storms we've had, you know, hopefully this will help benefit them in one way, shape, or form. This will also help us assist in managing our costs for future drainage improvements and capital improvements to make sure that they're more equitable. Aside from that, this will also help us ensure that we meet our minimum standards from our National Flood Insurance Program. We're currently above our minimum standards, and one of the things that we've been looking at is to be getting our community rated. By getting our community rated, it'll help reduce our flood insurance costs to our citizens. And by updating our policy, this will help us increase our rating so that we can increase the savings that can come to our citizens that develop in the floodplain areas. Many of the areas that are currently being developed are in flood-prone areas or are in flood zones. So there's a lot of investment that is taking place to raise these areas outside of the flood zones. So by having a more stringent policy and a higher rating, it will give us better insurance rates for these residents, so they won't have to pay such high insurance rates on their flood insurance. Aside from that, this will also help us with updating our hazard mitigation plan, which we utilized heavily when we were seeking funding from the Texas Water Development Board in the recent FIF projects that we did. And this will hopefully also help us for additional funding with the upcoming infrastructure funds that may be available. For the scope of work, I'll go ahead and let Isaac talk a little bit about the scope of work of the project and the schedule. Go ahead, Isaac.
All right. Good evening. My name is Isaac Wakuja. I'm an engineer with SWG Engineering, one of your consulting engineering firms. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, City Management staff. I'm here today. Hope it's the beginning of a very productive partnership. Before I go the scope of work, I do want to just expand a little bit on what am I pointing at? Could be.
We can go back to the slides. So
Maybe the batteries. No?
one forward.
One forward, please. Yeah. So, thank you. Now it works. So what I wanted to expand on is that one of the necessities of having an updated drainage policy, it's basically the intensity of the rain events we've seen in the past recent years. So I won't take too long, but I do want to maybe explain or elaborate a little bit on what some of you may have heard before: 50-year storm events, 100-year storm events. And what that means, basically, it's just a layman way of explaining probability. A 100-year storm event has a probability of happening once every 100 years. A 50-year storm event has a probability of happening once every 50 years, and so on and so forth. But just because you receive a 100-year storm event in a year doesn't mean you're free and clear for the next 100 years, and you won't receive a storm event of that magnitude for the next century. What it means, though, is that the probability of, in any given year, of receiving a storm of that magnitude is, for example, a 100-year storm event. Any given year, the probability of it happening is 1%. A 10-year storm event, the probability of it happening on any given year is 10%. A 50-year storm event, the probability of it happening on any given year is 2%, and so on and so forth. The only reason why I'm saying this is because the last 4 years in the valley, we've seen storms, 100-year storm events, and storms that exceed that magnitude 4 years in a row. So we're seeing now that those models, those rain event curves are becoming outdated. So it's important for cities to protect themselves and increase their drainage policies to ensure they protect their infrastructure and their citizens. So it is important, therefore, to explore increasing the policy to mitigate larger storm events, to protect the infrastructure, like Mr. Garcia mentioned. So I just wanted to explain some of the reason behind that. It's not only to bring maybe an outdated policy up to date, but it's also to combat what we've been seeing in recent years happening across the valley and across the country with the recent larger storm events that are very likely to continue. So the scope of work is basically to update the drainage policy to be consistent with the City of Brownsville latest subdivision ordinances. The procedure, it's going to be a process where we're going to be holding public meetings so we can present where we're at and the updates, not only to the commission, but to the public as well. There's going to be a workshop with the City Commission so we can have discussions. We want to make sure the policy, it's not from us, it's for you, it's your policy. So we want to make sure that we receive input from the commission and the public to make sure we address your needs. So we'll modify also the policy manual with based on city staff input. And the final deliverable is the drainage policy itself to the City of Brownsville for implementation. Some other items that are appurtenances, tangents that need to be addressed as upgrading the drainage and erosion control policy and design manual. We need to include floodplain development requirements. We also want to make sure that we not meet the minimum, but we want to exceed the minimums that are being set by the local drainage district policies. We want to make sure that we are above those minimums. Also, it'll be important that we are coordinated in alignment with Texas Water Development Board, FEMA, and the NFIP, make sure we exceed the requirements. And finally, as well, make sure that we are ready for any changes that the state, through the Texas Water Development Board, may require through their community assistance visit. That's about it on the scope of work. The final deliverable will be this drainage policy that the city can implement to make sure, like we said, we protect the city and its infrastructure from future rain events. We have here a tentative project schedule, or maybe not tentative, it's pretty solid. We're going to be, our project conclusion is August 2022. So we're going to be working on this across the next year. The reason why the timeline is that lengthy, it's because we, of course, need to have those public meetings for input. We need to go back, take that input into consideration. We want input from the city staff, commission, etc. Also, we need to make sure that the flood study that's being undertaken by the city, we need that to be concluded so that we can take that information and just maximize what has already been invested into that flood study, maximize what the results are of those, so we can put them to work through the drainage policy. And we also want to receive input. Mr. Garcia mentioned there's going to be a visit by Texas Water Development Board. So we want to make sure that happens as well. And we receive input, whatever comments, feedback they may have, and we can adopt that into our policy. Other than that, that's it right now in a nutshell. And I'd be happy to elaborate or answer any questions that you all may have.
Is that, if you go back to the other, is that 3 public meetings or 9 public meetings?
Three public meetings. Meeting number 1, yes, 3 public meetings.
Okay.
It can be more or less, I mean.
No, I just wondered why you listed.
Because it says 3 on.
First read it, it looks like, anyway, it's not important. 3 sounds fine.
Yes.
And then
I see.
The policy document is done, what process does the commission do to enact it?
It would go before you all for adoption.
One meeting,
pretty much. Well, our idea is the workshop, where we would have most of the discussion, questions. One of the meetings, we're looking to meet with our local developers and engineers to see what input they may have. and they'll be open to the general public as well.
What's Cameron County Drainage District number one's involvement in the process?
We'll notify them whenever we have the public meetings, and if they have input, we'll definitely consider any of their input throughout the process of this whole study. They're heavily involved with us and partnered on the flood study with FEMA. So that flood study that we'll be conducting with them is really where we're going to be getting most of their input at the time. And that's why part of their coordination of their project is in coordination with the Texas Water Development Board project. So that all the local entities, and even we also include Rancho Viejo in that entity, Los Fresnos. So the surrounding areas and what they call the Port Isabel HUC 10 watershed will be providing input to it.
One of the interesting points I'll just make briefly on the drainage district is that statewide, drainage districts typically are not designed to govern your drainage. In our case, we've had to. They're the only ones that have something. Typically what they're for is to fund capital projects, typically regional projects, and then to maintain their assets. That's what they're really created for. So I think in our case, we've not done our part to make sure that our policy is in place for the city, because it's typically not the requirement of the drainage district. In our case, it's just unique that we have 5 in the county, but that's not their purpose. They're typically a funding mechanism versus a regulatory entity. So we've just relied on them because they're the ones that have adopted standards, whereas the city has not been as stringent. So I just want to make that note that it's not typically the way the state works. Any other county across Texas don't defer to a drainage district to govern drainage. It's a city requirement. In our case, it's been a little bit more unique, let's just say.
So if we adopt more stringent criteria, will they honor that or?
Well, they have no way to honor it. It's a part of the permitting process. So it's within the city's purview. They don't govern permitting in that way, which is, again, I go back to the point that the permit is typically issued by the city of Brownsville. So it should be a city of Brownsville policy that is implemented.
Your policy would supersede.
Yeah.
Meet or exceed, yeah.
Within the city limit.
Within the city limits.
Within the city limits and their boundaries.
Yeah, and water doesn't know city limits is the problem.
So what happens if neighboring cities don't have as stringent policies, and
That's the nature of the beast, right? It's the way it works. Which is why typically drainage districts account for that, because what they'll do is they'll pick up the rural areas, the non-urbanized areas, so that they can take care of regional projects that lead between a large city, a small city that has no resources, that has no policy, that can't afford the engineering or doesn't invest in the engineering. Drainage districts typically pick up the gap there, and that's what they're designed to supplement and support.
Policy wise, that's 100% correct. In addition to that, what we're doing is through the Texas Water Development Board money, we included the surrounding cities so that they can plan as part of the Half and Associates plan. It'll include a master plan for drainage improvements, not only in Brownsville, but outside of Brownsville and the entire watershed that affects our city. So you'll have projects that'll show scope of services that would be needed to improve drainage that will benefit the city of Brownsville. May not necessarily be inside the city, but it will benefit the city as well.
I would just like to say, and I think you guys know, Doro, in your department, that this is one of my top priorities. And of course, the turnaround time is nowhere near what I'd like to see, but I understand the process. But I would admonish you guys, don't let that date slip. This is far too important. And then I think for leadership, I think we need to start to have talks with other cities and even the county, because eventually those areas will come and ask to be annexed. And if they were built to a lower standard, it becomes a problem for the taxpayers of Brownsville that we have to deal with. And there's no reason for that. And especially hearing tonight that homeowners' insurance rates can come down with higher standards. That's something that can be done countywide. And all of these people, the drainage districts, the municipalities, and the county should be stepping up to provide some type of relief like that by raising the standards.
No,
So let's do what we can.
I would note, Commissioner, great points that actually they began doing data collection in September. So we signed the agreement in September. They've begun to do some work. So we have a little bit of a lead time there built into the scope. This is kind of the kickoff where we'll start now doing the public process. The other point I'll make is that the good thing is this is not like the UDC, which requires a lot more notification and all the Chapter 211 and all that stuff that just adds more time. This is not going to involve that. So it's on us to just stay on task.
Well, and let me say with regard to that, and especially when it comes to public input, I'd encourage you guys to set those dates as early as possible and make sure we publicize them well, because that's one thing that I think the UDC work fell short on. I don't think there was enough public input. And I think that's why we're finding things now that we're having to go back and fix.
Definitely.
I have a question. This policy, how would it affect existing developments and structures that are in this?
This will be for new improvements.
But if, say, an existing structure gets modified or there's an expansion or they're grandfathered into what was approved, I just want to know how that's
So the modifications would be done through the city at that time, because typically your drainage infrastructure is dedicated to the city for maintenance. So we would be the ones doing the modifications. It would be through either noted on the master plan that it would be required based on a master plan, or because it failed, one or the other.
Yeah, we have this isn't, for example, going back to planning, when you adopt a new set of codes, there are certain triggers that require them to meet that new code, that new standard. It doesn't work that way with drainage, unfortunately. And so what happens, and Rodo made the point about the equitable distribution, what happens is that generally it falls on the city's capital improvement plan to pick up those projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next agenda item, work session, hotel occupancy tax.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and City Commission. I'm Monica Tellem. I'm the Convention and Visitors Bureau Manager for the City of Brownsville Communications and Marketing Department. Today, we're here to present to you all the results of the hotel occupancy tax audit. This presentation reflects a summary of the report that was sent to you all. Just as our first steps, we developed a framework to outline the process that I'll review really quickly. First, we received authorization from City Commission on September 21st, 2021, with the objective of determining organizational compliance with Texas Tax Code Title III, Local Taxation Subtitle D, Local Hotel Occupancy Taxes, Chapter 351. The scope consisted of reviewing and analyzing of accounting expenditures, marketing campaigns, and tourism data for fiscal year 2021. Because of the scope, we compiled an audit team consisting of members from City Commission, the Communications and Marketing Department, Convention and Visitors Bureau, City Attorney, City Manager's Office, Office of Strategic Initiatives, and the Financial Services Department. As you'll see in the report, the process consisted of 4 work sessions, and this does not include correspondence and additional leadership conversations that the team had. Additionally, the HOT audit team conducted research, and in summary, we found that most cities have HOT disbursement policies in place, but it was found that some policies have an audit or reporting clause within them. Organizations are also required to submit post-event and quarterly financial reports. So here you'll see some additional information on the tax code, which governs the HOT tax expenditures. It's simplified by requiring expenditures to meet 2 parts. One of them being heads to peds, that's like the simplified term for it. And the second one being every expenditure must belong to one of the 9 categories, which I'll share in the next slide. We also included the Attorney General's opinion on the matter. And as you'll see, the Attorney General's office has stated that the governing body of the municipality must make the determination regarding the propriety of a HOT tax expenditure in the first instance, subject to judicial review. And then regarding the definition of tourism, the Attorney General states that tourism is defined as guidance or management of tourists. And by definition in Section 351, a tourist is an individual who travels from the individual's residence to a different municipality for pleasure, recreation, or culture. Here, as I mentioned, the Texas tax codes requires the expenses to fit additionally into one of the 9 categories. The first one being convention and visitor centers, convention registration, advertising the city, promotion of the arts, historical restoration and preservation, sporting events, enhancing or upgrading existing sports fields. For certain municipalities, I'd like to note that Brownsville is not an eligible municipality for this category. Number 8 is tourist transportation systems, and number 9, signage for attractions frequently visited by hotel guests. Because of this, the audit team does recommend adopting City of Brownsville eligible HOT expenses. That was also in the report if you'll have any questions. Next, we'd like to review a summary of the results. Here you'll see the organizations that the audit team reviewed. I'd like to note that we did receive additional information from the zoo for Q3 that's not reflected in your report, but we did receive it. So we did audit the Gladys Porter Zoo, Sable Palms, the Brownsville Society for Performing Arts, the Brownsville Museum of Fine Art, the Children's Museum, the Camille Playhouse, and the Brownsville Historical Association. So in order to keep the presentation short, we did summarize our findings, and here you'll see the common findings that we found through the audit process. Many of the recipients use hotel occupancy tax funds for indirect costs. So this includes salaries with administrative duties, benefits, and other ineligible expenses that are not directly tied to overnight visitors. Other findings that we found were that job descriptions do not sufficiently represent hotel occupancy tax eligible activities. Visitor tracking was insufficient or didn't exist at all. Marketing was executed within Brownsville and the Rio Grande Valley. And account reporting does not reflect hot dollars versus other funding sources. So here's a comprehensive list of our recommendations as the audit team. So the first one is adopt the City of Brownsville hot eligible expenses in accordance with Texas tax code. Implement a hard deadline for reports and emphasize that failure to submit in a timely manner will result in reimbursing the funds. All funding recipients must track and provide visitor data, including a hometown of the visitors. Recipients can use their existing point of sale systems to track zip codes and information like that, or they can use other platforms like Eventbrite, Cvent. The City of Brownsville have also offered Bandwango as a platform for them to use free of cost. Our next recommendation is we'd like to enforce indirect costs cannot exceed 10% of the total award. Establish a percentage of hot marketing efforts to be outside the Rio Grande Valley or staycation boundary with a focus on our drive market and beyond. Require updated job descriptions for hotel occupancy tax subsidized positions to be submitted annually with the organization's application. And require that positions that are funded by hot funds document both in their job description and in their accounting platforms. We'd also like to require a monthly log for the employees whose positions are subsidized by hot funds. Require each recipient to host a signature event or program that focuses on bringing overnight guests to Brownsville. We also highly recommend recipients utilize a fund accounting system or a comparable system to differentiate which funds are hot funds and which are other funding sources. We'd also like to require each organization and for the city to have employees take classes and attend seminars in hot fund activities, nonprofit management to encourage understanding of obligations incurred when receiving funds from the city or other grants. And then lastly, we would like the hot audit team to review submitted reports and documentation on a quarterly basis. Lastly, we were also asked to put together some recommendations for reclaimed or unused funds. This is aside from our fund balance that's required. Number 1 is fund large-scale regional and marketing campaigns to promote tourism in Brownsville, Texas. Number 2, fund the Convention and Visitors Bureau service level recommendations, which would be prepared in fiscal year 22. Number 3, use for capital improvements such as gateway infrastructure, visitor center facility improvements, or any other projects like that. Use for special projects incentives with a focus on arts and culture to be brought to the City Commission for review and approval. And then lastly, place in Fund 11 for supplemental reserves. And that concludes my presentation. So if there's any questions, I and the audit team are here to address them.
This seems like a lot I went through the PPP and you're asking for more than them. Is this something that you all are still working on?
So this will be an evolving process. However, our team did do quite a bit of research as to what other organizations require. And this is pretty much on par for the amount of funds that they receive on a recurring basis.
And it's important to note for my fellow commissioners here, a lot of these recommendations are rooted in state statute. This is what the law says. This is based on Attorney General opinions. Our city attorney weighed in on this as well. And the staff that served on this committee did a tremendous amount of work looking into the organizations, reaching out to other cities, and finding best practices in crafting these recommendations. For the shortcomings that we've got right now, I think in the city, we can't blame the entities who are the beneficiaries of this right now. This is behavior that's been driven by the city, by previous administrations. And I think we've seen in these last 2 years, we've been starting to move in the right direction. This is a bigger step as part of that process. So it may be a little more alarming to some. But this isn't about Brownsville wants to get tougher. This is about Brownsville needs to be holding up to the standards that are set by state statute.
I have a few issues. One, from what I've seen, it seems like every entity except for the zoo got the money that they were awarded.
Yes.
So why was only the zoo
Yes.
set aside?
So with the zoo, we had some issues with receiving reports. I actually went back to just double check and confirm for today's meeting. According to the agreement, we require our reports to be submitted within 30 days of the end of the quarter. And for the zoo, we received Q1, which is October, November, December of last year, on September 15th of this year. And so when the city did not receive their reports, they stopped payment. It's a similar pattern for Q2, which is January, February, and March. We received that report on October 25th. And for Q3, which is April, May, and June, the city received it on October 29th.
So are they still eligible to get the money, or they already missed the window?
So technically the agreement has ended and they did not submit the reports. However, our recommendation is so that way we can continue to support the zoo, is to extend the agreement and honor the funds that were awarded previously.
Okay. And then I understand that like the statutes or the rules don't provide for exceptions for the pandemic. But that was unprecedented and often takes a lot to changing the laws or the statutes takes a long time. So what are we going to do to make up for what's that money then? Is it going to go to all of that, which really just benefits the city and not our local organizations?
Well, no, that's not correct, because the work that CVB and comms and marketing would be doing is about bringing tourists to Brownsville. And those tourists are going to be patronizing these entities. So it will still have a direct positive impact. It's just a question of, are the entities getting the money and running the ads, or is comms and marketing getting the money and running the ads? But it's still about benefiting local business, local hotels, the local tourist industry. It's not something that would just benefit COB proper.
Well, true, but these are nonprofits who usually really depend on anything or things like hot tax and other, they come to rely on it year after year.
What I would add is that I think the zoo, I remember we were in discussions with them to assist them with some funding. What I believe led to them not asking for the funds is they secured PPP and alternative funding that made them whole during the pandemic. So I think that's likely why they were not requesting for the funds from HOT. And then the other thing I would remind you all is you will have the opportunity to allocate that cultural and tourism funding of 2.8 million, which is what we've earmarked for nonprofits in our request for how we want to use the ARP funds. That fund came before you all like 2-3 meetings ago. So in other words, we're not taking, for example, HOP money specifically and funding some of their funding needs, but we are using ARP monies to do some of that. So I think all in all, the zoo being the larger recipient, I think they found a way to keep themselves whole. Everybody else will have an opportunity to be supported by decisions that y'all will make here soon. And I think the applications just closed last Friday. I think they met today or yesterday. So you guys are going to soon get some of those recommendations and opportunities to help nonprofits. For pandemic effects, I think, longer term, obviously one and done type of thing. I think longer term is where this is going to have a process for funding being recaptured and then how that gets appropriated on the back end.
Right. Well, under normal conditions, right, they wouldn't be hurting as much as.
Exactly, yeah. So I think the 2.8 will go a long way because we actually asked the nonprofits, if you recall, we asked them for their losses. And that is the same number that we use to apply for that funding.
My other thing is, you said that with the form now, they're going to have to keep track where visitors are coming from and list their hometown. What happens to like Winter Texans who have a home and maybe they're using an address locally, but they just spend a small amount of time here? Do they count? Because they're like for birding and.
Right. So it just depends on where they put their address. But I'll also mention that depending on the percentage is not tied to their allocation. So depending on the amount of visitors, it doesn't reflect how much they get with our current application process. And so whether they put their local address or not their local address, right now, we're just asking for them to capture the data.
And with a lot of Winter Texans, since the number of months they spend down here is relatively small compared to the year, their bank cards are home-based.
Yeah.
And so when they swipe those cards at local places, the zip code is read by the card readers. And that's something that they can use as a tool, the entities, to start reporting on. We're getting visitors from these zip codes around the country. And yeah, for entities that hadn't been tracking, that's something CVB's been encouraging them to do.
If I may add, Commissioner, the tracking also benefits us from a marketing perspective. We can start strategically targeting. Now we have data to back up, especially Winter Texans, and continue our promotion in these targeted areas to increase more traffic into the city.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the platform that we, the city, have, we can also use that data to capture digital information that has their zip codes of their original location.
Then the only other, the final thing is if we're doing, this is great, and then the other, recipients can see how the other ones are faring. But out of fairness, the CVB should also be transparent and provide a report, an audit of itself.
Absolutely. Last year, we did implement our first annual report. And so we did provide a lot of this information, and then we're more than happy to provide any information requested to the commission from our division.
I would also, to that point, mention that I know that the Audit and Oversight Committee had also identified doing some of this same work, auditing HOP funds. For that matter, they can audit entities, they can audit the department. So I think that'd be a great way. I mean, there's always ways to do it internally, but even the audit function that we have now is well designed to help do just that. So.
And while there's no recommendation here, like right now where we saw, egregious deficiencies, like reports coming in 9 months later as opposed to 30 days later, there's no recommendation that those funds not be paid out, just that there has to be compliance. But now moving forward, we don't want to see a pattern of it's going to be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months before we're getting reporting. There needs to be, and especially for the entities that are getting the lion's share, they need to lead by example.
I want to thank you for your work. The last couple of years has been terrific on this topic.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just acknowledgement. Nobody had any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item. We have consent agenda items. Chair Pro Tem and Commissioners, well, we were asked for consent agenda item number 10 to be removed, and that is going to be put at the next city commission meeting.
I believe Commissioner has.
If we can take 11 and 12 separately. Because I can't vote on those.
All right, so we'll do 1 through 13
and then-
minus 10, 11, and what?
12.
And 12.
Motion to approve all except for
10,
11 and 12.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. All right, so 10, we're leaving. 11.
I'll move to approve. This is the second and final reading.
And I'll abstain as I have a conflict of interest on this one.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Do I have a motion on 12?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Next agenda item,
Sorry, if I may, number 12, I didn't realize they.
You abstained as well.
Well, I abstained.
yes. Next, we're going to go into the public hearings. Public hearing number 1. Public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2021-03-B, providing for amendments to Chapter 2 of the city's Code of Ordinances, Article 4, Division 4, Sections 2-367, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, modifying the members that comprise the committee to 7 community members. Multimodal will be presenting.
Mayor Bertram, Commissioners, just a change to mimic what the other boards have. 7 members, and so it will be 7 committee members. And so staff recommends approval.
All right, do we have a motion?
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
Sorry.
This is a public hearing. Do we have anybody here to speak about this?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Next, we have public hearing number 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2021-1696 to amend Chapter 22 Business, Article 2, Alcoholic Beverages, Section 22-31, Levy of Fees, and Section 22-32, Late Hours, Mixed Beverage Permits, and dealing with related matters. This will be presented by City Secretary's Office. Ms. Morgan.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Commissioners. As y'all know, I'm Lori Morgan, the City Secretary, and I'd like to thank Yolanda Larza Gomez, our Deputy City Secretary, and Jennifer Avendado, the Assistant City Attorney, for their assistance with this item. The Office of the City Secretary is presenting these changes to amend Chapter 11, Article 2, Alcoholic Beverages, Sections 2231 and 2232. This is due to a change that took effect on September 2021, where the 86th Texas Legislature directed the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to consolidate 75 licenses to 37, requiring most businesses to have only 1 license. The changes were to take effect on September 1st, 2021. TABC also provided local governments like the city with maximum local fees that can be charged for licenses and permits for a 2-year period, which is limited to 1/2 of the state fee collected every 2 years, with several permits being consolidated as presented in Exhibit A in your packet. There was a delay in making this change for our ordinance due to limited training and guidance provided by TABC. As a result, the Office of the City Secretary had to get guidance from the City Attorney's Office, and several cities in our state did have similar issues. Therefore, there was a delay in presenting these amendments to the Commission. As a result, the city will not charge any local fees for the following permits: Forwarding Center Authority, Food and Beverage Certificate, and Late Hour Certificate. Businesses are still required to provide a completed City of Brownsville application for alcoholic sales and a TABC application for validation of land spacing compliance from the Planning and Redevelopment Department and city secretary certification. Without the certification of the city secretary, TABC will not be able to issue a license to the business to operate. The office of the city secretary will only be collecting the processing fee, which was formerly called a usage fee, for processing the application. For the permits that renew every 2 years, the city will also collect 1/2 of the state fee upon renewal when and as authorized by the TABC. These are mainly for mixed beverage permit, mixed beverage with food and beverage certificate, wine and malt beverage retailers permit, wine and malt beverage retailers off-premise permit, retail dealers on-premise license, and retail dealers off-premise license. The processing fees currently charged by the city will remain the same, which are wet store $50, wet restaurant $75, liquor store $150, and bar $200. So this is just a brief overview of the changes. We'll open it up to any questions that you might have. We also have Mr. Victor Flores that can answer any legal questions regarding this, or we also have members of planning department here that can answer any questions related to that.
All right, well, this is a public hearing. Do we have anybody to speak on this? Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Next, public hearing, we've already heard, public hearing number 3, so we're gonna move on to number 4. Public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2021-013 to amend the zoning map from residential estate to residential transition R3 for a 30.631 acre tract of land, being all of blocks 16 and 17, Emilia subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at Emilia Lane, Brownsville, Texas 78526, as shown in Exhibit A. This is in District Number 3. Planning and Redevelopment will be presenting.
Thank you. Once again, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. So this is a request to upzone approximately a 30-acre tract of land. They're going to be going from residential estate to residential transition, R3, to allow multifamily development. This property is fronting Emilia Lane. This is the aerial map and also the 200-foot buffer map for mailouts that were sent out for this case. There were 25 mailouts and 0 written opposition. So in the vicinity or nearby is the sports complex, the Brownsville Sports Park. We also have some undeveloped land in the area. Zoning that predominates is regional center. There's also some light industrial to the east and west. And there's also R3 zoning to the southeast. So this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. P&Z did recommend approval to rezone from residential estate to residential transition R3.
And if there's a public hearing, do we have anybody to speak on this matter? Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
Motion to close public hearing. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I just want to confirm, there's no houses or adjacent, parece que, that everything's undeveloped all around? See. Okay.
Predominantly, yes. There is one house across the street on Emilia Lane.
That one on top with the circular driveway, maybe? Okay, thank you.
Does it say what district it's in?
3. We have a motion on the table.
I'll second it.
It's already been seconded.
Second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Thank you.
Next agenda item, public hearing number 5, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2021-014 to amend the zoning map in agricultural to residential single family for an approximate 32.65 acre tract of land out of lot 7, block 205, share 29, Espiritu Santo Grant, El Jardín subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at the intersection of Dockberry Road and South Dakota Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A. This is in District 1, Planning and Redevelopment will present.
Thank you. This, again, is an upzone from agricultural to residential single-family R1. The proposed use will be a single-family subdivision. It will be a total of approximately 160 lots. It will consist of 3 phases. The first phase will have 72 lots. This is abutting Dockberry Road and South Dakota Avenue. So again, this is an aerial view of the property, also showing the 200-foot buffer map for mailouts. There were 37 mailouts and 0 written opposition. The predominating zoning surrounding the property is R1. I'm sorry, Ag. Planning and zoning does recommend the approval to rezone from agricultural to residential single-family R1.
All right, this is a public hearing. Do we have anybody to talk on this?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second,
All those in favor?
I'll move to approve the request.
Second.
No question. The residential that's nearby this right now, do we have major flooding problems there today that we know of?
I would not be able to answer that question right now.
For future items that are coming up like this, I'd encourage staff to be prepared for questions like that. Because yeah, until the standards are raised, that's my concern, is we're going to have 100 and something lots here that could be homes that are going to be flooding.
I think that's very important. But would that be assessed at the time when they're submitting their plat review, or now when they're just requesting a zoning change?
Drainage is always addressed during the plat review. We will send the construction documents to the corresponding reviewing parties, which would be engineering and the drainage district, if it's within their jurisdiction, and they will assess that at the time.
And based on some of what we've talked about today, everybody who's a developer is wanting to build something like this is on notice. If we get our plats in before August of next year, we don't have to build to the higher standards. That's my concern.
Well, we had a vote.
Yep.
We voting? Did we vote?
Yeah, we had.
Motion in a second.
Yeah, there's a motion in a second. Aye.
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 Next agenda item number 6, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2021-015, amend the zoning map for residential suburban to residential transition and commercial courier for a 2.5 acre tract of land out of block 27, El Jardín subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 3839 Jaime J. Zapata Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A. This is in District 2, Planning and Redevelopment will present.
Thank you. So here we have a acre tract of 2.5 acres. The current zoning right now is R2, residential suburban, which allows for a duplex use. However, the property owner would like to change the zoning. And what the proposed use now is a daycare along with some multifamily apartments. The property is fronting Jaime Zapata. Here we have an aerial view of the property, mostly residential. You do see some multifamily to the east and to the west. We did send out 12 mailouts. We didn't receive any opposition. In this particular case, the property owner is requesting dual zoning, CC corridor commercial in the front and R3 multifamily in the back. We have a current zoning map of the property. You can see it's mostly R3 with some CC commercial to the east. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval from residential suburban to corridor commercial and residential transition.
Do you have anybody to speak on this? A motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do you have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Next agenda item number 7, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2021-017 to amend the zoning map and traditional neighborhood courier to regional center with a specific use permit to allow a used car lot for 0.52 acres comprised of lots 1 and 2, part lot number 5, and half lot number 6, block 15, East Brownsville Addition, Cameron County, Texas, located at 1844 East Fillmore Street, Brownsville, Texas, 78520, as shown in Exhibit A. This is in District 1, Planning and Redevelopment will present.
Thank you. So here we have a request to rezone the property to Regional Center RC with a specific use permit. This specific zoning is a higher zoning intensity than commercial corridor. With the new development code that we adopted in December of 2020, regional center zoning with a specific use permit is required to operate a used vehicle car sales lot. So the current zoning of the property is traditional neighborhood and traditional neighborhood corridor, and those were most light commercial. That's nearby traditional neighborhoods that you see in the downtown area. The current proposed use is a car lot, is an existing built business. However, the property owner is expanding and the property is fronting along Fillmore. Here we have an aerial view of the property. You can see there's the property itself does have a car lot, but the property owner is expanding to the southeast. The majority of the uses are commercial along International, but you do see some residential uses in the area. I will say that we did get 29 mailouts. However, there was no opposition.
And that is a private residence in between the car lot on International and where we're proposing this, correct?
So there are residential uses there. However, in speaking with the property owner, I believe that that is no longer going to be used. Is that right? Right. So after the presentation, the property owner can discuss on the matter and what he plans to use with that. Here the current zoning, as you can see, for the most part on Long International, majority of the uses there that back up to the residential uses are traditional neighborhood. Like I mentioned earlier, they're mostly light commercial. However, there is already an existing car lot there. And in order to bring into compliance with the current Unified Development Code, the regional center zoning is required along with a specific use permit. The specific use permit is there for the commission to have additional requirements to the property owner if the commission wishes.
So are they going to buy the residential home nearby and then if they get approved, they would expand?
Understanding already belongs to the property owner.
I think the developer's here.
Yeah, so I'll let him speak to that. So this is a feasibility map that we were given by the property owner on the east side. All that already belongs to the owner, and that's already a car lot. We're just having him expand. And some of the notes that staff provided just on this feasibility plan, it has not gone through the permitting process yet. But we did let the property owner know that there are setbacks required when you're adjacent to single family uses. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval. They recommend approval to rezone the property from traditional neighborhood and traditional neighborhood corridor to regional center with a specific use permit to allow this used car lot to expand. I'm available to take questions at this moment, and the property owner is also here as well.
All right, do we have anybody to speak on this?
Owners here, if y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to.
Does anybody have any questions?
So would you expand to the yellow, include the yellow lot as well? In the bottom? See.
No, the business only goes along the frontage of Fillmore. The residences front Bringold here. There are no residences that front Fillmore.
So there's a little greenhouse that belongs to someone I know. Did you already buy that and she moved out? It's like closer to International from where the lot is.
This house up here?
I think, yeah.
No, that is not. No, that's not associated with us.
Was anybody opposed to this?
Staff didn't receive any opposition, no phone calls, no emails.
Actually, the way he applied as well gives the city more control with the specific use restrictions, considering the new ordinances that y'all have put in place. He's created the buffer that he needs. And other actually also overlapped one of the structures into the existing development so that it encompassed it all.
In my opinion, I would be fine with it as long as he was neighbors and the surrounding homes. More than generous as to what our code is.
It really is. I mean, it's very small. but if you were to look at the facade, it's got a brick veneer in front of it. He's got a bunch of greenery. Now, I've seen this, I guess there is this potential structure there, but it's not like the car lot on International. It is different. This office building looks like a home. It complies. I think it satisfies the ordinance.
As I mentioned, the specific use permit is allowed. It's a tool for the commission to use if they want to make any additional requirements other than what the current UDC allows for.
And he's been operating there before, so it's not like it's a complete shock to the neighborhood.
It's been operating for about 5 years.
Okay. And we would definitely know if we had complaints about it, so.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Nobody was opposing. There were some neighbors, but.
Actually, just 2 years ago, or maybe 2.5 years ago, I think it was before the city commission to approve the first phase of it.
Okay.
All right. The specific use permit that we're talking about, what all does a UDC allow under that?
That is a tool that's specific to this case and this item. That's for a city commission to use. The UDC specifically states that when you're budding residential, you gotta have a buffer. There needs to be a setback separation from the residential use to the commercial use. But if, for example, the commission wants maybe add more greenery, more than the required 10% by the UDC, or something else other than that, the specific use permit allows for that.
And I think what I'm thinking more of is we're talking about used cars here. Are we talking about just the sale of vehicles, or would this allow for a mechanic shop to be run out of there and you've got several vehicles just sitting idle that are in a state of disrepair? What would be allowed if this is just approved as is?
So in addition to the car sales, the preparation of the cars for sale is allowed, the washing of the cars, the replacement of parts, all the normal things you have with vehicles that have been purchased for resale. The code, I think, anticipated that the use of the specific use permit would provide the commission additional leverage in cases just like this. And so prior to the adoption of the UDC, we had limited tools available to regulate conflicting land uses. And so we often have code compliance complaints from residents who live too close to mechanic shops or restaurants. And so the new UDC is designed, one, to prevent that from happening, but also to provide the specific use, a permit tool to provide the commission with the flexibility to add additional mitigation in the event that the commission has concerns.
And that was something that planning and zoning incorporated into this specific use application, correct?
Are there restrictions in the specific use permit?
No, the commission can set.
No, there haven't been conditions added at this point.
No, not at this point.
There's standards within the.
In the building and everything that he put on his.
Those are requirements required by the Unified Development Code. So let's go back here.
So there were notes added to the submitted plan where if in the event they do decide to do maintenance or let's say do body work on a vehicle, everything has to be done indoor. It cannot be done outside or have vehicles lying around the property to where it ruins the aesthetic of the single family subdivision.
Say that one more time, that second part, where it has to be done indoor or?
Indoor. Everything has to be done in an enclosed area to where the single family aesthetic of the neighborhood is not compromised.
So the way it's on the agenda today with a specific use permit to allow a used car lot, that would allow them to do mechanic work there as long as they do it inside of a building.
Yes.
What about the cars that are waiting to be worked on?
Well, that's something else that was added to the plan. No inventory can be left in the state of disrepair.
Okay.
On the property. And that's to address the concern of not having like I said, the aesthetic compromise.
And I understand for a business owner who's just bought a bunch of vehicles or bringing them down, now you've got to prep them and get them ready for sale. I get that. It's that, well, you know, this guy sold him a car 3 years ago. Now he's bringing it back and he needs some work on it. And so is this other guy. And so is this other guy. Now you've got 10 or 15 cars coming back, sitting around waiting for whatever type of work. I don't think that's what I interpret to be the use when we're talking about this. And that's why I want to make sure if we just say, I move to approve the way it's worded on the agenda here, does it allow them to do that? That's what I want to make sure we're clear on.
Yes, there were some notes added. And if there's additional notes that you would like to be added, that's the tool that Mr. Garces mentions that can be incorporated. You can add.
So the notes that you guys are referencing, where can I find those in the packet? I'll pull that up right now.
Well, Commissioner De Los Santos is doing that. I do have a request for future presentations. Whenever there's an existing structure, can we have a photo of the facade? That way we also kind of get an idea of what's there, what's existing for future commission meetings.
Right there.
Thanks.
So I actually drove by there because I'm familiar with the area. It's in my district. And I have to commend you. Sorry, where's the owner? I have to commend you. It's very well kept. It's very nice and stuff. But the thing is, we're trying to, the reason we paid to do the UDC was to fix problems like this. And now that we won the HUD grant to try to transform the whole area between International, mind you, this is on the other side of the expressway. There are a lot of car dealers and that area has a lot of residences all around. So while I do believe that you're going to keep it very nice and you're going to keep it clean, what about all the residences? And so we're already making exceptions to the UDC that we just passed. So what was the point of passing the UDC?
If I could respond, I mean, one, this is a super unique situation that you can distinguish from the other applications that I think you'll see in the future that you'll have those concerns about. When you look at, when you drive down the road, you'll notice that there isn't any, all of the residences face, I think it's Ringgold. There's no other residences other than the one that was right behind the first car dealership. And I'm not even sure if that's on Fillmore. Here, if this isn't used for that property won't be used for anything else. It really is the only use that he can have out of that. There's a home there that he's gonna take down. I don't know if you have a picture of that. But that really is the unique situation that we find ourselves in with this application.
But wouldn't you agree that behind there and all around it's residential? It's just that, and I understand because that's the ramp to get up onto the expressway. And so it faces towards the ramp.
It's practically a frontage road. But yes, the homes behind it, yes, I mean, there are homes that back up to his dealership. And he's created the buffer with nice shrubbery, big trees that are already there. And that isn't a problem or hasn't been a problem over the last 5 years.
But Galonsky, to your point, when we developed the UDC, we placed that specific used car lots in our most intensive commercial district. And so you're going from a residential zoning district to our most intensive zoning district with the addition of the specific use overlay on top of it to add additional controls. So it is a big move from what we call traditional neighborhood district to the regional corridor, which we think of major intersections like Morrison and I-69 would be a regional corridor, Alton Bloor and I-69 would be a regional corridor. So there is a big difference between what the UDC considers a regional corridor in this request.
And on top of that, just because we didn't get responses from people around, I have to take into consideration my constituents. They're not the type who would, who might be savvy enough or have the time to come in and voice their opposition, so.
Well, I mean, how big is this? The 3 lots that you already have are.
It's 150 feet existing.
16, and how much are you adding?
50 feet.
So you're adding 25% basically to it.
Is it 150 total, or is it 100 and you're adding the 50?
It's already 150 and we're adding 51.
Do we have any other questions?
The lot is like 50 by 100, or, I mean, it's a small lot.
So you're only adding one lot to?
One lot. He already has 3. And that's working and that's still working and we have that going out. Right? Do we have any questions for you all?
I have a question about being on, for your customers. Will they park on the street or park on your property?
Inside, we have parking spots already built into the plan. Yes.
Because it's hard to distinguish because it's a lot, right?
I mean, when we first expanded it, we complied with everything they've asked us for, and we're still complying, and we plan to comply, going forward.
So you've already expanded in the past?
Yes, yes, we went through.
You started with one, went to two?
Same, 3 years ago.
Okay.
We got approved.
And just to offer up to what I recall during those committee meetings was that the genesis and the intent was to mitigate proactively new used car lots where it would kind of create the madness, so to speak. Because I mean, we've dealt with the complaints and the concerns. The EDC certainly is there to be as flexible as it can. That's why the SUP is required. So I would just say that the distinction would be a new used car lot versus one that exists. I think that door was open pre-UDC. I think that's that. So I think the expansion, look at the UDC being able to help support how to further mitigate any impacts with the expansion being very modest in this case. So I think it's a balancing act. It's never meant to be overly rigid. But I don't think this is necessarily what we recall being the case. I think the concern was recreating this again somewhere else versus allowing for a modest expansion. So just to share some of what you all share with us and how the UDC is more responsive, but yet it's meant to be worked within wherever it makes business sense. So just.
I also think what planning did, they made him overlap his structure into the existing development. So it actually put all of the new restrictions are now all encompass the entire project. So I think you got actually more control over the entire development than you had before.
So let me ask you guys, and for the business owner as well. So you heard my concerns about not wanting to see it turn into just a full service mechanic shop. If we're talking about the work you guys do for mechanics or body work is limited to vehicles that you all bought and that you're prepping to resell and upkeeping, is that something that works with the business plan you guys have, what your goals are?
I mean, most of the reconditioning, call it work, we do it outside the lot. We subcontract, mechanics or shops to do it. We want more of a display.
Good.
Basically to sell, not to have a shop. Honestly, every business wants to sell. Right?
Of course. And my family used to be in the used car business, so I absolutely respect what you guys are doing here.
So, yeah, we want as much display area.
Good.
Already, for the public.
And to further respond to your question, Commissioner, no doubt he appreciates the concern that you all have for the used car business and being in it. He's been here before and he knows what the expectations are and he knows what he has to do to comply. So no doubt we appreciate your concern.
And so I would say, and this is why I'm asking, because these notes that weren't part of the agenda item where it just says mechanic and body work must be done within an enclosed structure, must provide fume mitigation in the event of body work. But that doesn't say mechanic and body work is limited to vehicles owned by the business or vehicles that have just been purchased for resale. So to me, that says they can work on anybody's vehicle and they can have it there waiting for it as long as they want. That's why I wanted to clarify. I know we've got the latitude to put more restrictions in there. Whether or not we need to is going to be based on our understanding of this language. Counselor, how do you interpret that?
I'm looking at the second part, which just says this property is exclusive to a used car lot use. So I think combining those two, I understand your concern, but I think it's covered in the other provisions. And these are already provisions that are established by the UDC, just without the special use permit.
Well, right, if the special use permit could probably go with this one because it's zoned. The RC is zoning.
As my understanding, these are already part of the UDC, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
So the UDC specifies what used car lot use is?
Yes, it has its own definition of used car lot, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't allow for mechanic work for vehicles that aren't owned by the dealership?
Outside of the enclosed area.
And that's what I'm saying. If you combine those two together, it resolves, I think, your concern.
If that is the definition in the UDC, which we don't have before us right now. That's why I'm clarifying.
Well, I'm saying if the used car lot, the used car lot use and combined with the top provision which says any body work must be done within an enclosed structure.
Mhm.
I think that covers both of your concerns.
Don't know that it does unless UDC covers that. And we don't know that because it's not in front of us. But UDC could say used car lot means working on used cars, selling used cars, washing used cars, storing used cars. Since we don't have what UDC considers this, I don't know that yet. That's what I'm saying. That's why I need to determine if we need to put some additional language in there to cover it.
To answer your concern, not every use or every proposed business is defined in the UDC.
Right.
Now, with the, as the councilor mentions, trying to use both of them or specifying, because since it's an SUP, it's specific to that particular use that's being proposed. So therefore, nothing outside of the UDC of proposed use, which is a used car lot, can be established there. That's why they're done in unison or run together, the zoning and the specific use, to only allow that use to be tied to the zoning. So given that only that use will be allowed, then any work related to that use is unique or exclusive to that car lot.
But is it too exclusive to cars owned by the business?
As inventory.
And
I think that's all I'm going for. I want to make sure somebody can't drive by and say, hey, can you guys change my transmission?
Yes.
Okay. And I think I'm good.
Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to vote against it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We understand your.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
Not a problem.
I said aye.
Who seconded?
Rose seconded.
I wanted to, but they beat me to it.
I'm gonna have to step away, so we got Mr. De Los Santos. Here he goes. There you go, Mr. De Los Santos.
Be careful. Pass it down here. I don't need to move chairs. Just pass it this way. You were hiding it, huh?
I'm gonna keep it for like.
Okay,
All right.
for the rec,
7.
yes, the record is now 6:39 and Commissioner De Los Santos will take over as Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. So we are now on agenda item number 8, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2021-018-PD to amend the zoning map by establishing a planned development district for Butterfly Grove subdivision and the remainder of multi-phase residential development consisting of 108.99 acres, Cameron County, Texas, located near Old Dallas Road, Brownsville, Texas, 78526, as shown in Exhibit A. This is in District 3, Planning and Redevelopment will present.
Thank you. So this is not necessarily a rezoning change. It's more of a request for the property owners to get a plan development overlay by the city commission to establish, develop specific setbacks for the property. So the current property zoning is R1. The proposed use is single-family subdivisions, and the property is currently along Old Alice. Here's the current tract of the property. We do have 76 lots of record recorded. The total proposed development is about 700 lots. The aerial view of the property. Use the zoning map, like I mentioned earlier, it all is zoned R1 with the exception of the property on the west. What the plan development does is allow the commission to approve setbacks that are different to the UDC. That can be moved around or be different than what UDC is. The standard R1 setback for the front yard is 25 feet. Also, the R1 district doesn't allow for accessory uses to be placed in the front yard. In this case, the developer is asking that they can have a shorter setback or smaller setback and are allowed to have the detached garage in the front. And here we have a picture of that. And this is what they're proposing for the development. So this is why we're coming before the commission to have a plan development agreement with the property owner to allow for a shorter setback and to allow accessory uses in the front yard.
And what use in the front yard? I'm sorry.
And an accessory use, which in this case would be the garage,
Okay.
an accessory building.
Wait, so you're gonna, the first thing you see.
Garage.
Garage and it obstructs the,
That's the development trend.
It's weird, but it is.
okay.
Yes, so if this was a standard R1 development without a PD by permission of the commission, they would not be allowed to do so. So we because the setback is 25 feet. In this case, they're requiring a lesser setback.
I think I've seen developments like this on South Padre even, where you've got the garages on the front, you can pull in there, but then to access the buildings.
Yeah, so it has been done before in the valley. Esperanza Homes, Rhodes Enterprises, they've done this in there's Lago development.
So this change today is just about allowing for.
It's for city commission to allow them to have the garage in the front within the front yard setback. Or as a matter of fact, no, I'm sorry, not within the front yard setback. They're not going to have the standard 25 setback anymore. They're going to have setback of about 5 or 0.
So when we say the setback is 5 or 0, is that limited to the detached garage or the accessory building, or does that mean they can build anything else up there?
It's based on the site plan they've given us. So this is what they're looking at.
That's the difference with the PD.
Right, so that's why the PD allows us to have a lesser setback. Yeah, exactly. So it'd be site specific to the requirements that they gave us.
Okay.
The screen's a little too small, so I can't see it, but that's what we're looking at throughout the development.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Rogelio Hernandez. I'm here representing the owner of Esperanza Homes. If you guys have any questions for me, I'll be able to answer any questions.
This is a public hearing. Public hearing is open. If anybody'd like to start with questions for the property owner.
Wait, I may have missed this. So are all the lots pretty much narrow like this or?
Not necessarily, but they will meet the minimum R1 requirement, which is 5,000.
You have these narrow lots because as you see, it's that curvature design.
So to just add or respond to your question, the subdivision is based on a meandering street design. So basically it's very large curvatures, and that causes for most of the lots to be sort of like a big slice of pie, narrow in the front, wide in the back. So because of that configuration, that's why variable setbacks were requested to be able to accommodate the designs and to be able to have the detached structure in front of the primary structure.
Can they build an apartment or rooms over the garage or no?
Well, the R1 zoning does allow to have a second story, but based on what the property owner, and they might provide more insight on it, they do have strong HOA requirements where they are limited to only the models imposed by the development.
It's our understanding as well that they'll have their own HOA to take care and monitor each other.
Yeah, I think when you look at garages, typically when you don't have a garage, or even if it's in the front, you look at quality of life issues, parking and things of that sort. So I know that planning, I was at one of those first meetings that I dropped off, but basically the HOA, so this developer has done it before. They have the experience to do all kinds of unique designs, but they understand that the regulatory arm on maintaining the standards of that neighborhood will be through their HOA. So in other words, the city's code enforcement department won't have to be called on to go and take care of civil issues about parking and aesthetics and quality of life. We mentioned to them and they were ahead of it. They understand how to do this type of product, how to layer in the governance to make sure that they regulate themselves and they kind of self-police and they don't come to us with property value issues and all that kind of stuff. So in the UDC, the PD was designed specifically for this. It's more accommodative. You're not going to find a set of development standards in any city pretty much that covers the spectrum of things that a developer could propose. So I think they've anticipated the issues. It is unique. I know that CDCB is our client and they're part of making things innovative. And so this is kind of encompassing and they're really taking advantage of the PD. Absent the PD, this could have been overlaid to death and who knows what else would have been done, but at least the PD is responsive to this proposal.
And with this being an HOA situation, does that mean these will be private drives and not city streets? Or will these be city streets?
City streets.
Our city streets, okay.
Didn't they already start part of this development?
They had to come back, and they had to come back and work on.
Right now, they're working on the first phase of the development. In the lots that had this particular model of the home, they do have to address with this PD. So right now, those are sort of on hold until the commission approves, then they will move forward to.
So they provided their lot book. And I think when you look at their development, they were realizing that they were going to come upon a permitting issue. So they proactively came and said, hey, what about this? And that's when the planning basically triaged the development to allow for the PD to be implemented.
So is the whole subdivision going to be in this format, or is it just one section?
It's all that area that highlighted in red, or around the red area, sorry, the red boundary.
It's approximately 600 lots.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Big gap.
currently, we have a master plan for 614 lots. Phase 1 is fully built and recorded with the city of Brownsville. In fact, currently we're working to bring phase 2 into reality. I don't know if we're probably pending last minute items to get it under construction, but we already started about 70 houses, which is about halfway of the subdivision. And this is a popular model, and like members of the city management and planning, we're trying to proactively adjust the PD so that we can accommodate for the Santa Cruz model, which is has that courthouse in the middle, courtyard, I'm sorry. It's a really cool idea where you have garages on both ends. So if you're hosting your own, I don't know, children's party or so, you can open the garage in the back and you have an enclosed area for yourself. The wall in the front is a masonry wall, and it's usually, we keep the aesthetics of the house in mind with the masonry wall, so that whenever you pass by this subdivision, you won't notice that this is actually the house is in the back. I don't know if you guys have any other questions for me.
Okay, wait, so that's a wall or is that a sidewalk? It's a wall. I thought it was a sidewalk. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Anyone from the public to speak on this item? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. A motion, is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Next, we have items for individual consideration.
Thank you, Ellen.
Item number 1, consideration and action to authorize and execute an interlocal agreement between the City of Brownsville and Cameron County Regional Mobility Authority to provide a match of $2 million for the development of the preliminary engineering and design for the East Loop project. Multimodal Transportation Department will present.
Mayor Bertram, City Commissioners, good afternoon, good evening. We have an opportunity to partner with the Cameron County Regional Mobility Authority. The East Loop is one of those projects has been in development for the past 20 years. We finally now in that final phases of getting the funding. TxDOT has committed $100 million for the construction. Once it does become on system, to expedite that process, we are partnering with the RMA and the county to contribute $3 million towards the design and engineering. We do have also Mr. Pete Sepulveda, the executive director, online for any specific questions. We did have staff pass out the letter that was sent out to Texas Commission, Transportation Commission chairperson, asking them our priority, our number 1 priority for Cameron County is the East Loop. And so today we ask you for that contribution of $3 million to be paid out in fiscal year 23, not this fiscal year, next fiscal year, to make sure that we secure this project. Mr. Sepulveda, I don't know if you have any words.
Thank you, Joel. As Joel mentioned, this project has been ongoing for quite a while now. We've had a partnership with the city of Brownsville and the county and TxDOT for a number of years now. We have the schematics that are about 90% complete. The RMA is doing the environmental document in-house. It includes a land swap with Fish and Wildlife. Fish has already done their environmental document and they have already issued a finding of no significant impact. We continue to work with IBWC because one component of the project is to relocate a portion of the IBWC levee. So we're doing that coordination with them. Once we do get the engineering done, the next phase will be the acquisition of right-of-way, and the idea is to utilize federal money to acquire the right-of-way, and then TxDOT would come in with the construction dollars. So this is a high priority for the RGV MPO, and Cameron County has already committed $3 million. That represents 50% of the cost of the design and engineering for the project. So if we're able to get this funding from the city, the design can be expedited, and we've got a commitment from TxDOT to review and approve our design work as we're moving along. And those are done in different stages, at 30%, 60%, 90%, and then 100%. And obviously that'd be concurrent with the environmental document. And so I would urge that the commission fund the request.
Yeah, and Mayor Commissioners, we programmed the funding in the capital improvement plan since 2020, 2019. So the money's there. So that's not an issue.
When do you anticipate the construction would begin?
Pete, construction start?
Right now, we would say probably 2023, 2024. The only component of it we don't have control is the environmental. But once we get the environmental document complete and approved by TxDOT, we can acquire the right-of-way. And even then, TxDOT has told us that they'll work with us on the right-of-way acquisition. Even if we don't have environmental clearance, there's certain components of the right-of-way acquisition process that TxDOT will allow us to start on. So, they realize it's a priority for them as well. And so I think 2023, 2024 is very doable.
Thank you.
One other note, with the fiscal 2023 budget, part of what we began to discuss internally with planning and even with the port is to potentially set money aside for a corridor plan. So that when we build the East Loop, it's important to plan for the use of that entire corridor. So in other words, there are area plans that cities can do. This investment is significant enough. It's $100 million. It's going to open up a whole new area that is right for the industrial type. Having a corridor plan to coincide with this as it's being constructed so that by the time it's done, we can be better prepared to accommodate future development there. That's something that we'll look at setting some funding aside also in fiscal 2023.
This is a much needed project because for those of us who have to travel the four corners between 5 and 7 at night, traffic is a nightmare. The amount of trucks that are passing is incredible. So I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? There's a motion and a second, and I have one question. The 2023 payout, that's based on when the project's naturally going to be moving forward, correct? That's not artificially delaying the start of this?
No.
Right. Very good. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2, consideration and action to amend the current thoroughfare plan presented by Multimodal Transportation Department.
Good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. Back in April, we were here to discuss the thoroughfare plan. During the MPO years, the MPO basically took care of all transportation functions for the city. Once the MPO merger happened, they no longer hear the MPO and the actual long-range plan studies and the Thurford plan was covered through the MPO. And so since we didn't have any teeth once the MPO ceased to exist, in the interim, we came to City Commission back in April and adopted the Thurford plan. And so it's been a back and forth. We've been discussing with engineering, with planning and developers on the best course of action. We made some modifications back in April. We're back here again to make some changes. But I will say that these are just Band-Aids in the meantime until we can come back and do the full-blown mobility plan or transportation study that is needed for the region. And so I'll discuss the changes that we have here because of the development that we have, and I apologize, and I will stand to make it easier for y'all. The roadway that we are changing is the extension of Naranjo Road, this area, before it would extend to 550. Because of the development, our future development that may come here, we wouldn't want to disrupt that development. So we'll be easy enough and they will be able to connect to this future roadway. Similar here, this is by Valley Regional Medical Center on Alton Lower. We have certain areas, and so this roadway and these were added to alleviate congestion. Currently, we have stacking of vehicles, and you have ambulances that stay in traffic. And so by creating this loop to the there, they can be able to access the hospital. Similar connecting two more. So these segments in green were added. This was a project that we had in the books, and so we're just mimicking what Cameron County and Thurford has, where it bypasses the future expansion of the airport. And then lastly, we've had a lot of development in this area. Alton Lower is down here, Paredes, and so we don't have a east to west connector. You have Alton Lower 511, and then you have Morrison. So we have nothing in between. Make sure that we keep the right of way and have that major corridor. Before the MPO plan had so many different alignments, and Make Development had to, each developer had to make sure that they gave that right of way. But the issue was it had 5 different alignments. And so we want to make sure that this is the most feasible alignment so the developer doesn't lose those lots. And so this is the final alignment, which is in blue.
And what's that called?
This would be Pineda Road, future Pineda Road. With this action, it is only to preserve the right of way. It does not entice us to build the roadway yet now, but it gives us that teeth for the future, come back and actually build the roadway that is needed.
And where's the railroad? This is that kind of gated area?
Yeah, so just a quick comment. Oh, thanks a lot. This is far from ideal for how a city would want to do its thoroughfare planning. But Hoyle just mentioned what the issue is. A thoroughfare plan really is more of a conceptual plan. It's really trying to look into the future, whereas a mobility plan is more granular and it's looking at present development patterns. We had budgeted in the fiscal year 2021 work plan, you may recall, 350,000. That was an estimate number. Because we've never had one before, it's going to be a complete first time. It is about 100% over what we thought. Hoyle has done a great job working to negotiate down. I know Helen's been involved, and I've met with them just 2 weeks ago or last week. So basically the number is going to be closer to 650. Regardless, though, it's needed. This is, to me, I liken this to the UDC investment. When I got here, there was a lot of planning pain points. UDC it's not a panacea, but it's made it far better and it was long overdue. Same thing here. I mean, we're in growth mode. We know that. That's not new, but planning like this as we go for thoroughfare plans and roadway sections and right of way, it's just not ideal. So next meeting, we're going to bring that to you all. We have found a way to supplement the difference to still get that mobility plan done. But it's necessary because it's just, this plan is not responsive, and we're gonna have to basically adjust as we go versus a mobility plan will address that for us.
So I have another question. Well,
Go ahead.
so a thoroughfare plan, as you've said, it protects the right of way. But could that right of way include a road, a trail, a sidewalk, or is it just for a road?
No, it can, Commissioner. And so the classification only gives right away 80 feet, 100, 120 feet. And so because we do the complete streets, count for that, yes.
Yeah, corridors, arterial, connectors, et cetera. So the hierarchy of streets, basically, this only covers corridors. Anything below that, it's not responsive as much. So that's what we're having to, now that we're dealing with the arterials and connectors to those corridors, we're having to do it as we go because the thoroughfare plan that we have is regional in nature. It is typically you have counties that fund corridor plans. Many counties fall under COGS. So the COGS come in, they do corridor plans, but then the city still has to do its own mobility plan. That's kind of that's what we find ourselves now in because of the RGB MPO consolidation. But even under the BMPO, it still was going to be tricky on some of
The reason I thought of that is because I saw Railroad Street. And so the West Rail is going to end at Railroad Street. And wouldn't that be super cool to use that right away along Pineda to get that person, that jogger or rider all the way back to the battlefield trail?
Yeah. Yeah, and the difference is you do it as you go, or you do that proactively through a vision, right? And that's the difference. That here we are, now we're going to tell the developer, hey, we want to add a trail. I mean, it's a lot more disruptive and chaotic when you're having to require that. And you had a plan that Hoyle mentioned had 5 different potential paths, 10, 15 years ago, whenever that was done. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I do. Though, I'll be honest, I don't know the difference between the different types or classifications for the street. So what exactly is considered a thoroughfare?
So thoroughfare is more of the long range of the plan. The classifications is minor arterial, major arterial, and collector. And so here, for example, the blue is the major arterial was 120 feet right away. Anything in green is a collector. And so we do have in other segments where there's other colors that represent the minor arterial. And so those are the classifications. You have 80 feet for collector, 100 feet for minor arterial, and then 120 feet for major arterial.
Okay. Because just like based on the one, the only one that I know pretty well is it's the one for District 1. So Dakota, where we have Idea and Frontier, which we is highly trafficked and people are always concerned about the safety of that street. Is there a way that one can be like made wider or safer? Or how do you bump it up to the next grade so that it gets to be safer for the amount of traffic that it receives?
It's something we can look at, Commissioner. I can speak to you one-on-one if you would like to add it. Dakota, you said?
See, because you have Lopez and Frontier on the same one, and then you have the city buses going through there. But bueno.
Yeah, and there's transportation engineering that goes into that. I think that would be, it depends on the land use patterns, the land use plan, all that has to get overlaid. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to, what do we foresee happening there in the schools and what's within that area that would demand a certain type of roadway section. So yeah, we can look at that on a case by case.
And the other thing, Commissioner, that area, it's kind of tricky. You have Cameron County and then you have city limits and then the other side, it does the same, right? And so it's something that obviously we can partner with the county to revisit that. Something I know you brought last time was sidewalks. And so that's something we're still actively looking for that area as well.
Okay.
Other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Agenda item number 3.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, this is not an item that I would need to step out for? No? Okay.
Item number 3, consideration and action to approve an interlocal agreement between the city of Brownsville and the city of Harlingen for municipal solid waste disposal. Engineering and Public Works Department will present.
Good evening again. Here in the audience, we have the Mr. Gonzalez, city manager for the city of Harlingen, and Mr. Davila, the director of public works for the city of Harlingen. This item it concerns an interlocal agreement between the city of Harlingen and the city of Brownsville to allow their waste to come to our landfill. Currently, the city of Harlingen has been taking their waste to Hidalgo County. And of course, they're looking at options of, how they can better serve their cities. Our landfill is closer, so, they approach us. And it is an advantage to the city of Brownsville as well. The city of Brownsville, the landfill was recently converted into an enterprise system last year. So meaning that it's got to be self-sufficient. So bringing a customer like Harlingen goes a long ways to helping the city, helping the landfill become self-sustained. And, we got needs at the landfill. We got equipment needs, personnel, and et cetera. So this definitely will go a long way to helping that. I believe that the city, the Harlingen's current agreement terminates at the end of this month. The city of Brownsville, our landfill is a type 1 landfill, which allows us to accept the solid waste, municipal solid waste, some barrage and construction materials. It is approximately 265 acres in size with a lifespan of about 66 years. And the current intake at our landfill is about 350,000 tons per year. The Harlingen, the 81,891 tons may not be correct. I took a 2-year average from the information that they provided me, and that's what I came in. And so it would increase our volume by 23%, and that would reduce our landfill life by 15 years. If we were to accept this arrangement, our immediate needs at the landfill would be to hire some more personnel and get another dozer, a D8 at least in size. Maybe some other equipment, but definitely we need a large dozer and the personnel. Currently, we are running about 18% overtime, which is higher than the national average. The national average for should be between 6 and 12% overtime. The rule of thumb is 10%. We're constantly running at 18%. So that alone tells me that, we are short-staffed and we need people. So this arrangement with the city of Harlingen will definitely go a long way to help us get the personnel that we need. Additional needs be to put in an automated inbound scale. We are averaging 400 cars or vehicles per day coming to the landfill, and we only have one scale. So the ticket master or the weight scale master is constantly, writing tickets and weighing vehicles that are coming in. And sometimes, depending on certain days of the week, the line can really just extend out to the entrance of landfill. And there's been some occasions where some vehicles extend past the gate. It's, and when that happens, we have to convert both scales, the inbound and outbound scales, inbound. So we can come in and simply because of the volume. By providing an automated scale, we can tag certain vehicles, like the easy tag that you see on toll bridges, where it'll be totally automated. And those vehicles that will be tagged will simply go through that scale and it'll be automated. The tag system will read the vehicle, take the measurements and upload it without the scale master have to do that work. And then, of course, give them the green light so they can take off and go to disposal. We would consider doing that for all commercial vehicles, Harlingen and some of the other commercial vehicles that currently are used in the landfill, and really take a lot of stress out of the current employees who work at the landfill. Other long-term needs that I see is providing a type 4 landfill. We need to look at permitting and getting a type 4 landfill. And we do have 125 acres adjacent to our landfill that we could use to permit a type 4 landfill. The difference between a type 4 landfill and type 1 landfill, a type 4 landfill is restricted just to brush and construction materials. And because it's restricted to those type of materials, it doesn't require the infrastructure that a type 1 landfill requires. So like, for example, the leachate collection system, the gas monitoring system, daily covers, and et cetera. So it makes the operation of type 4 landfill a lot more economical. And that will lower the cost and allow us to bring that type of material. Harlingen, from the analysis they gave me, I estimated that about 16% of the waste will be qualified to go to a type 4 landfill. And of course, also look at our reports, and we're currently taking in about 22% construction and brush materials into our landfill. So if we take that material out as well, it would restore and even make up for the lost years that we anticipate this arrangement will take up. So we will recover all the lost years and even some more. And so my recommendation is to approve the interlocal agreement with Harlingen, approve to allow us to hire some more personnel at the landfill, and allow us to purchase the D8 dozer that we need and other small equipment that we might need, install the new automated inbound weight scale, and commence the permit process for type 4 landfill. And of course, all of these will be funded through the landfills, gross revenues. And in this case, Harlingen will be part of that. Any questions?
I would just mention that the city had an opportunity to do this 10 years ago, and it didn't happen. I think we've talked about this recently, but anyhow, I think I just want to thank Armando. They run the numbers. They found a way to make this competitive and beneficial for Brownsville and the city, where we cover our costs and can make these enhancements while netting revenue for the landfill fund. But yeah, I think it's an opportunity, and it's great that we had the staff that could assess this proposal and put together a solid game plan to allow us to benefit, and really Harlingen, they're going to benefit a lot. All that deadhead that they have today is going to be better for their staff. It's win-win. I mean, they should come to Brownsville. So I'm glad we're here.
Yeah, I think I have a chance to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Now, I was just going to say, I had the chance to talk to the team already, so all my questions had already been answered about impacts to the life expectancy of the landfill by taking the additional tonnage. So I'm satisfied this is a good deal for both cities.
Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez, the landfill is always amazing. When I go there, it's like impressive the way things are run there.
It is very impressive. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Agenda item number 4, consideration and action to award a term contract IFB number SMO-698-0921 to Peterson Construction Company, Inc. for street milling and overlay services as funded in the Capital Improvement Plan and Community Development Block Grant. Engineering and Public Works Department will present.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This item here is for a contract for mill and overlay services for the city. This is to supplement our Public Works Department whenever we cannot keep up with the workload due to the amount of funding that we have available. We'll rely on this contract to supplement our mill and overlay program that we have for our street maintenance. We received 3 bids for this project. The lowest bid came in with Peterson Construction. On this particular project, it's not a monetary amount that we're awarding at this time. It's just the pricing. Once we have streets selected, we will come back to the commission with those individual streets and the actual pricing for each street for your approval. If you all have any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them at this time.
I'll make the motion to approve, and let's hope they go to District 2 street.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Carries, and there is a motion to adjourn, and there is a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Meeting is adjourned.
It is now 7:16. So there's no further business to come before the commission. The meeting is adjourned.
Hour and 16.
That was.
That was good. And it looked, there was a lot.
2 minutes too long.